We at Temis Technologies are aiming to help purpose-driven techies from all across the globe to grow their careers in the UK, irrespective of their career path. We are a London-based consulting firm specializing in career consulting, global talent visa, startup and innovator visa endorsements. We are recognized as the UK's #1 global talent visa, startup and innovator visa endorsement experts. For more information, visit our website, temis.co.uk. To begin with, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Liam Davies, and I am the organizer host of this event. Today we brought experts together to discuss how to get a job in the UK and plan, showcase your skills, apply to relevant jobs and market yourself in the best possible way, especially in the UK employment market where the competition for rewarding employment is fierce. Our speakers will also cover the best ways for professionals and freshers to prepare for an interview and gain some essential advice with a comprehensive overview of the UK recruitment process. Today's speakers are Sarah Robinson, a certified career coach and an experienced interviewer, and Gayatri Panda, a business partner of Temis Technologies. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start with the presentation. If you have any questions or concerns during the presentation, please use the GoToMeeting control panel to leave them in the chat section. We'll have a question and answer session when the presentation is over. I'll bring up all your queries and our panelists will respond to them all. Let me hand it over to Sarah. Hello, Sarah. You may go ahead with the presentation from here.
Thanks very much, Liam. Very warm welcome to everyone. I'm Sarah Robinson. I'm an experienced career coach, interview coach, been working over the past 20 years, helping everyone from students and graduates through to senior execs and board level, entry level positions, be successful in their job search and the whole recruitment process. So part of the webinar that I'm doing first of all is really sharing some of my key insights and advice in ensuring you have a really strong UK-based CV, a cover letter that is relevant and tailored. I'll touch very briefly on using LinkedIn for job search and making connections, but then we'll focus on ways to improve your interview preparation, what to expect, and how to better communicate your strengths and expertise. Next slide, please. Okay, brilliant. So to give some initial context of a typical UK recruitment process, bearing in mind that depending on the type of and size of firm and organisation that you're working with, it may be that it's a straightforward CV and cover letter with a panel interview. It could be a more extensive online application form with an attached CV, and then maybe a longer assessment centre process. And that can be a mixture of different activities, presentations, technical interviews, other sites of psychometric tests and assessments. So it really does depend on the nature of the role you're being interviewed for, the volume of applicants, and how they're progressing with that. Interviews are typically anything between 30 to 60 minutes. You're often interviewed by 2 to 3 interviewers. And one of the things with the ongoing coronavirus pandemic is that the actual online and virtual recruitment space is very much here to stay. So it's very much one of those areas that face-to-face interviews are starting to become more prevalent in the UK at the moment, but they're very much using initial stages as they progress. So one of the things in terms of some key areas for applying for jobs in the UK is that recruitment timelines will vary considerably. So sometimes recruitment can be a really long, drawn-out process. It can take several months. Other deadlines can be actually turned around really quickly, depending on the need and the employer requirement. So when searching for jobs online, it's really worth checking the vacancy is still current and available. Now, this might seem a really obvious point to make, but what we find is that a lot of vacancies stay on a number of different online job boards for quite a long time. Often there's no clear closing date. Recruiters can be interviewing as applications are being submitted. So it can be a very fluid process, particularly if you're working with recruitment agencies. So any advertised opportunity should have a contact name, contact email where you can reach out. If you want to go back to the previous slide. Yeah. So any advertised opportunity should have a contact name, and recruiters expect to be contacted and ask questions to see if it's a good fit, if the role is still recruiting, what the hiring process is, and anything else that might make it easier for you to decide if it's worth your time and energy and worth applying to. So you can sometimes go through applying for several jobs and hear nothing, no reply, no rejection even, just no feedback. And it can be very, very isolating and demotivating. And sometimes you just don't even have a contact with a human being throughout the whole process. So one of the other points is that don't always expect a reply from an application form you've submitted. You're also unlikely to receive feedback, which again is not ideal, but it's something just to be mindful of if you're expecting employers to engage with you directly. And before we touch on the sort of UK style CV and sort of elements with this is very much, if you want to go back, please, with the slides, is very much about quality, not quantity. So job boards and employers, they obviously want to attract the best candidates, and they want to make the application as streamlined as possible. So they make it very, very easy for you to upload your CV now, click here to apply. And as a result, that speed and convenience might mean that you're not tailoring your application to each post because it takes time and effort. So if we can go back to the previous slide, please. Fabulous, thank you. So one of the things to remember about a UK style CV is that it's not a resume. So when people are Googling CVs, a lot of resume templates and formats do come up. And a resume is typically a US-based version of a CV that's usually a page long. It's got a lot less detail on it and lots of different fancy versions and templates. If you're applying for a UK-based position, note that a 2-page CV gives you a much better opportunity to highlight your skills, your achievements, and your impact. So if you're a recent graduate, for example, with not huge amounts of employment experience, a 1-page CV, as long as it's referring to skills and impact, would be fine. If you are a more experienced professional, having a 3-page CV is also acceptable as long as it's following the principles that I'm going to outline today. So typically up to 2 pages, no photograph. It's really unusual in the UK unless it's specifically asked, but don't include a photograph. In terms of contact details at the top, use your name as the title, not CV or curriculum vitae, because it's clear that's what the document is. There's no need to put on date of birth, marital status, gender, anything like that. But the one thing you might want to consider is about highlighting the name and type of visa that you possess, which enables you to work legally. Because a lot of employers are understandably quite cautious about employing overseas nationals if it's really unclear your eligibility to work. So having that at the top can be really helpful. A profile, and I'll share an example shortly, is a few sentences to capture who you are, what you offer, and where you want to be. Having some core skills or key skill areas such as computer programs, technical expertise, languages, and fluency level can be a really good way of sharing some of the key words and elements from the job spec. When you look at your employment and education sections, typically you start most recent first and work back. So it's about being consistent in the way you present your information and not just listing responsibilities. It's not a job spec. What you're doing is highlighting what you've done, but highlight skills, achievements, and impact. And over a 2-page CV, you've got more scope to do that. With your education and professional qualifications, again, be mindful that if a UK employer is not familiar with the education or the professional standards that you've acquired, then you might need to look into the UK equivalency. Interests, you can include these. These are typically something that, if they're relevant to the role or you haven't got as much work experience, can be useful to include. And a minor point with references, a standard phrase of references on request, absolutely fine, no issue with that at all. But typically references are a lower priority on a CV. References will be contacted either just before an interview or after the interview itself, so you don't need to take up space with that. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I don't know how many of you have heard of applicant tracking systems, ATS. And the reason why I really wanted to flag this up is that it can be a downfall for a lot of candidates, whether you're applying in the UK or overseas. So ATS is a popular software tool that recruiters use to help them filter candidates in order of suitability. So bearing in mind that some roles receive hundreds of applications every day, they become a really useful tool for businesses, saving time and money. So an ATS scans through each CV that's submitted for a vacancy, and it uses keyword trackers, and it can help candidates find that the ones that they have the essential skills for. So if you have a certain qualification that's needed for that job, the ATS would filter out applicants. So many of the keywords ATS systems use are often the hard skills. They'll be looking at the technical skills, credentials, job titles, software or tools that are relevant to the role and the industry. If you are highlighting a lot more of the softer skills, dynamic, team player, self-starter, because they're not quantifiable, recruiters are less likely to search for them when searching through candidates. So they can be emphasised more through letters and interviews. But a few general principles that I'd really encourage you to think about. Avoid fancy CV designs. Now, some of these templates for CVs look amazing. Those are colour, they're dynamic, they help stand out. They work really well for US-based resumes, but the ATS systems obviously don't actually like them very much if they've got lots of graphics, tables, logos, too much colour. So keep it simple, keep the formatting simple, clean, common professional font style, no graphics, break the text up so you've not got big chunks of text, use bullet points and double check spelling and grammar. So this is all about tailoring your application to the job, using keywords, not buzzwords. And the difference there really is that as impressive as being a thought leader or go-getter or self-starter or hungry for success, how impressive they might sound, they're not actually keywords that are quantifiable through a job description. So think about the active verbs that will lift the descriptions of your education and sort of your employment. And that would actually be a better way of how you pitch and promote yourself with that. Next slide, please. So on this slide, this is really just to put a bit of a visual representation behind the comments I've just made. So if you look at this, the black and white version on the left-hand side, a few warning flags for me if I'm looking at this from a recruiter's perspective. You don't need the photo. I think it's quite an old-fashioned looking text, Times New Roman. It's focusing on duties and responsibilities, which is great, but actually where are the skills highlighted within that? If you're reading the career objective, an experienced professional seeking a stable position involving management in contract and procurement, so as to fulfill the operational goals, it doesn't say anything personal to that individual. And one of the things to remember is if you read anything back, and it could have been written by anybody else, it doesn't differentiate you, it doesn't add any value to your personal application. And the other warning flag for me is very much about at the bottom where it says page 1 of 7. So my heart sinks at that point, because you shouldn't be submitting a 7-page document for a CV. On the right hand side, in some ways, visually, this looks much more appealing. The use of colour can be really effective, and I would encourage you to consider formats like that. But this is only a 1-page CV that gives very little detail about some of the impacts and the skill set, and doesn't really give an opportunity for this candidate to shine as much as they could do. Be mindful of having just a list of skills. If they're relevant directly to the position, great, but sometimes if there's no context to them, it can be really hard to understand where you've gained those and how applicable and relevant they are. If we move on to the next slide. So on this slide, again, this is something that is a much cleaner, easier to read CV that would typically be accepted and considered really, really strong in the UK. And this is not about saying you should copy this template or you should have this as the perfect scenario, because all the advice around CVs are guidelines. So the things that I noticed from this is that it's laid out over a couple of pages, it's got very clear sections, use of bold makes it easier to scan the information, including the bullet points. Dates and informations are kept consistent. They've got a very clear core skills section, and the professional profile, it's a lot more specific. So if you move to the next slide, you'll be able to see the professional profile a little bit more clearly. So a multi-skilled, experienced software developer with an extensive track record of developing and maintaining high quality software solutions. So it's your elevator pitch, something that really differentiates you. And being able to quantify the amount of experience you have, for example, 15 plus years of experience, and the sectors and industries you've worked in, is a really good way of differentiating you as a candidate. So if we move on to the next slide. One of the things that you need to consider with cover letters is that the CV and a cover letter are a double act. You should not ideally be sending a CV on its own in relation to a job. Even if it just says upload your CV, ideally you need to be uploading a CV with a cover letter that's attached to it. Now, your cover letter is designed to make it clear your reason for application. Keep it short, formal, concise, so the equivalent of one page of A4. Ideally address it to the named person or whoever the recruiting or hiring manager is, and you're addressing 3 main points. So what are you applying for? Is it clear in your opening couple of sentences that you're applying for this vacancy, this is what you're currently doing, and your application is attached? Then the 2 points here, it doesn't matter which order necessarily, but you need to make sure when you're reading through your cover letters that they address these points. So what appeals to you about this job role with this particular employer? And then what makes you a suitable candidate? You're not repeating big chunks of your CV. You're almost having what you put on your profile, and you're having something that's really drawing their attention to key skills and areas that you might not have had chance to elaborate on your CV. Where candidates fall down in the cover letter is that they, sorry, if we just nip back a second, where they fall down in the cover letter is that they end up focusing just on themselves. They focus purely on what they can offer and giving lots of examples, and it isn't the space to do it. Your CV will do that job, but you need to use the letter to highlight exactly why you want to apply. And that's one of the difficulties, I think, with a lot of applications, is that people don't tailor their applications. They send a standard CV to every type of position they're going for, even if there's similarities, but the cover letter differentiates you. So a very quick couple of points around LinkedIn. Hopefully most of you use LinkedIn in some way. Even if you don't use it regularly in terms of posting or connecting, from a job search point of view, it can be really useful to include LinkedIn as a way of raising your profile and visibility. So consider using things like the advanced search tool for actually connecting with individuals and in companies that you may like to work with in the future. Contact individual connections on LinkedIn, ask for suggestions or referrals that might lead you to your next opportunity. Always try and send a personal message when you're requesting a connection. It can again help with that sort of connection build up. Always include a tailored application document when you apply for any job through LinkedIn. View and follow the career section of the company pages, and you can get notifications of when they're actually advertising positions. And things like if you're a member of a professional body or association, it can be easy to connect with other members and to raise your profile across that field. But remember that your CV or LinkedIn profile need to correlate. They need to look the same and give the same message. Next slide. And the sort of final point I want to make around LinkedIn is, are you making the most of the job search section? So you can set up notifications, you can do keyword searches, you can actually, yes, do easy apply, but there's a lot of huge amount of vacancy information that's posted for the UK market on LinkedIn. And also you can, on your profile page, you can update your career interests. So you can let recruiters, not your connections, but you can let recruiters know that you're open and available to looking for work. So you can type in a series of different job titles that you're open to considering, the locations in the UK, the types of contract, and how they can get in touch with you. And that's a really easy way to have recruiters engage with you. Okay, so if we move on to the next slide, please, where we're going to be talking about interviews. So when I work with people who are wanting to improve their interview performance, I tend to focus on how to be much better prepared. Preparation is absolutely essential in how you set yourself up for success. And I would encourage you to focus on 5 key interview themes that you would typically expect at any interview. So this is not about Googling all possible interview questions you can ever expect to be asked, because that's not the best way of approaching your preparation. So why are you the best candidate? What is it that you offer? Why you? How is this role going to play to your strengths? So having a very clear elevator pitch around your knowledge and technical expertise, the skills and qualities that you offer that relate to the job, this is the things that you need to be really highlighting about why you. The second theme is very much about why them. Why do you want the job? What's encouraged you to apply for this role, but also for that organisation? Where does it fit within your career aspirations and how you want to progress? And that's how you demonstrate your research, your insight. Commercial insight is key as well. How do you keep yourself up to date and knowledgeable about the work that you do within the sector? How do you demonstrate your commercial awareness and understand challenges and opportunities of the role in your industry? So having scenarios and insight into what's going on in the UK market, if you're applying for a UK position, can be really helpful in showing credibility and commercial insight to your answer. Anticipating scenarios, I think, is an interesting thing, because you may be asked questions about how you would respond to a hypothetical situation in the future. So how would you go about, what would happen if this situation happened, how would you approach it? So what you need to be thinking about in advance of an interview is, what are the potential challenges that you may encounter in that role within that organisation? How much experience have you had of doing something similar, but how would you approach it and talk through it in a logical way of your process? And a lot of candidates get thrown when they're asked these types of questions, but anticipating the challenges that you may face, the problems you might encounter, is a really good way to help prepare yourself for that. And the final point is around competency questions and great examples. If we can move on to the next slide. So there are other types of questions, including sort of technical questions and that sort of approaches with it. But competency questions are the backbone of many UK interviews. So in essence, a competency question is going to be framed about, tell us about when. Tell us about a time, describe a situation, share an example of when, describe an achievement. So it's an example that shows what you can do well. And again, where candidates go wrong is that they haven't thought about the bank of success stories that they can share. So if you think about at least 2 examples for each of the competency and skill areas that you know the job description is asking for, it's being able to have a bank of examples that you can talk about, focusing not just what you have done, but how you've done about it and how you've gone about doing it. And a really useful question to ask yourself at the end of each of these answers is, what does this say about me as a candidate? So if you are reflecting that question back after each answer you've given, or as part of your preparation, it can really make sure that you've addressed all the key skill areas. Next slide. So you may be familiar with STAR, which is an acronym: Situation, Task, Action, Result. This is very commonly used and encouraged by UK employers to help you tell the story, so to help you tell the examples that you want to highlight. So what you've got to remember with competency examples is that you're not just talking generally about when you've solved a problem or generally when you've worked with lots of teams. You are asked to identify a specific situation. What was that situation? What did you have to do within that situation? What steps did you take? So remember, it's about I, not we. So what steps did you take? And what was the outcome? What happened in the end? And if you've got something tangible in terms of facts and figures to support your outcomes, that makes it more credible. And if you also think after the result, after you've given what the outcome is, to almost add, what does this say about me? It says this. It says that I can work effectively with others, or I listen or effectively communicate. It re-emphasises the skill area that you've been asked for. Next slide. So the final top tips that I really want to share with you for my section of this webinar is really about, you need to see interviews as storytelling. You know, the star structure can really help give your answers a clear beginning, middle, and an end. You want it to be engaging to listen to showcase your contribution. So this is very much about how you tell a story. And if English is your second language, having a really good level of spoken and written English proficiency is really important. So when candidates are nervous, they can sometimes talk very fast. And if you've got quite a strong accent, it's not always clear what you're saying, or maybe the pronunciation of how you said something. So being more aware of talking perhaps a little bit more slowly can really help with that process. Practicing out loud is key. What you have to remember is that your written applications have done the job to get you interview, but interviews are a verbal skill. So you need to get used to hearing yourself say your answers out loud, whether you record yourself on your phone, whether you engage in some practice interview feedback. It's about getting used to hearing yourself out loud, and that can also help the memory. If you are overly reliant on scripted out answers and having information written in front of you, that's absolutely a brilliant way to help your preparation, but you should complement it by practicing your answers out loud. I highlight here about avoiding assumptions. You know, we take for granted so much, our experience, our skills, our strengths. And when we take for granted, we don't always make it easy for ourselves to talk about it. It's assumed, it's implied that you've got great communication skills or you can solve complex problems because you do it all the time. But recruiters need you to show that level of self-awareness, and also consider who's on the panel. Are they going to be familiar with the technical language, the jargon that you're using of the position that you're interviewing for? So you need to be able to flex on that. I always encourage candidates to focus on strengths as well as skills. So skills are the things that you can do well. They're the things that you can learn to do well and be competent in. Strengths are the things that you can do well, but you get energy from. You love doing them. They come really naturally to you. So when you talk about strengths, you talk in a more engaged, animated way. You talk obviously as well in a more positive way because you're saying things that you love doing, you're passionate about, you're excited by, you feel really engaged when you're doing something. So consider the language of that. Throughout all of this process, again, one of the main downsides of interviews as well as applications is generic responses. Responses that could just cover all bases, could be applicable to anyone and any organisation. It just doesn't work. And one of the things to remember about preparing questions, you'll have an opportunity to ask the employer, often at the end of the interview, have you got any questions for them? And there always should be at least one or two questions that show your interest in the position, in the role, in the opportunity. Having some thought about that so you're not sort of put on the spot at the end of the interview is really important. And my final point really is about always, always ask for feedback. You may not get it, it might not always be helpful or structural or useful, but are you getting any clues about what they would have liked you to have done differently or said differently? How are you going to adapt your approach next time? And sometimes having UK specific interview coaching can give you really tailored feedback and advice that might be really helpful. So that's the end of my section of the webinar today. And I know it's been a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but hopefully if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll do our best to answer them at the end of the session. Thank you.
Hi, so feel free to reach out to us via email or social media for anyone who's interested. And first of all, I want to say thank you, Sarah, for sharing such insightful content and shedding light on the crucial parts of making a job application, how to produce a compelling CV, cracking a job interview, and how to properly prepare oneself and overcome any concerns pertaining to the UK employment opportunities. Our next speaker is Gayatri Panda, business partner of Temis Technologies. Over to you, Gayatri.
Thanks, Liam. Hello, everyone. In this webinar, I will be covering few challenges international employees face while applying for the UK job. Before we start discussing the challenges, I would like to highlight why UK employers are keen to hire global talent. Companies in the UK value international workforce. According to the CIPD, many employers value workers from overseas due to the knowledge and skills they can contribute to the organization. As hiring international employees brings people into business who have different perspectives since they came from entirely different places. The blending of ideas and perspectives from various cultures is the best possible recipe for creativity and innovation that can take the company to new heights. Besides, innovation is now the top priority for the UK, and during the pandemic and Brexit, the government has set innovation strategy with a vision to make the UK a global hub for innovation by 2035. To achieve that, it has already made international hiring less complicated for organizations and reduced visa barriers for international talents. Additionally, UK business now more than ever expanding internationally, and companies see hiring international talents helps them in entering into new markets. There's considerable value to organizations in employing workers from overseas. For example, during the pandemic, as more and more companies moved to digital space and the need for specialist tech as well as business skills increased significantly, it created a huge gap. Hiring employees overseas can help bridge that gap. So international employees bring new ideas, creativity, and innovation to the UK to the UK companies, and this encourages organizations to recruit the global talent. Oftentimes, international employees help temporary vacancies, which requires pre-existing skills. Most significantly, international employees help UK organizations expand globally. Moving to the next slide. Next slide, please. Dipali, next slide. Before this. Okay, thanks. So, a study conducted by the UK Department for Business, Innovation and Skills finds that migrants bring knowledge and skills over and above that outlined in the job specification. Generally, migrants have brought culturally unique and complementary skills and knowledge to processes and ideas to the workplace. They have upskilled colleagues, leading to improvements in process and innovation and securing new work for their employers. These changes have led to both improved productivity and company expansion. So employers value the language skills migrants bring and the value of a diverse workforce with a global outlook, which can identify opportunities and new openings. Businesses benefited from migrants' insights and connection to the new markets, suppliers, and clients, which led to business expansion. So, therefore, more than ever, UK companies are now hiring international talent for their workforce, and a greater number of overseas workers are now applying for the UK jobs. However, many of the applicants find some kind of challenges while applying for the UK role. So, the challenge one. So in our day-to-day dealings with tech experts and business leaders, we regularly come across complaints that I'm tired of applying on job boards but no response, no positive response. So the next slide, please. Well, the response. Well, you can say the reason behind it, we are applying UK jobs similar way we apply in our home countries, and this is a wrong approach. I will highlight key problems which can be easily avoided. So if you are not getting a call back from the recruiter, it can be you are not targeting the right job boards. Hence, you are not you spending huge amount of time applying for jobs everywhere. Another problem might be your CV and cover letter are not according to the UK job market. So one of the salient feature of the UK market is that it's a highly specialized market, whereas Indian market is highly generalized market, which means for every job you customize your CV and cover letter. So keep in mind, tech specific, industry specific skills are always on high demand in the UK. If you applied for 100 jobs and no response yet, remember you are competing with a global candidate pool. And if you don't stand out by demonstrating your exceptional accomplishments and how you will contribute to the organization uniquely, you will not get a call back. After all, your CV, cover letter, and online application reveals a lot about you and your communication skill. So British companies demand a certain level of communication. You might check the submitted application because this may be one of the reasons why you are not getting a positive response from a recruiter. Our next challenge. So another challenge we hear frequently. Next, yeah. That recruiters are asking for work permit, and without a work permit, they will not set up an interview. Well, I will say reasons are you are not utilizing the power of LinkedIn. So nowadays, most of the jobs are listed on LinkedIn. Even though a recruiter is hiring, the companies are advertising the job opening on their social media platform. You can see clearly who is hiring, for which department. You can even find out the decision makers. So networking with such people will help you to quickly land a job. So when companies need your skills, they will be happy to sponsor you. Some complaints are we generally hear. So people don't accept my request, or I don't know if someone accepts my request, I should be asking for a job. Well, you might be using a wrong strategy that makes people to ignore your request. Besides, to approach people for a job, first you need a good strategy. Furthermore, you need to connect with right people and right company. In general, recruiters don't have decision-making power. They ask hiring manager, and the hiring manager asks department head or the product head or business head. So, and we are lucky that we are living in a LinkedIn era, which means you can directly network with these people. Finally, a recruiter will ask for work permit and disconnect with you if you are not convincing. So moving to the next slide. The last challenge I want to share is rejection in interview. So your CV got shortlisted, you received an interview call, and you are super confident of your knowledge, expertise, experience. You believed your interview went very well because your interviewer was friendly. You had a great chat and things were looking very positive. But you received a rejection email. Well, the reasons may be lack of understanding about British body language, such as extra politeness, friendly but reserved, might confuse international employees. As we live in an experience economy and customer experience matters to every company, thus, we want, like all the companies, they want employees who can represent them the best. So, not dressing appropriately as per the industry and job will lead you to a rejection. In general, we get nervous in interviews, and lack of understanding of interviewers' body language make people even more nervous. So consequently, some people speak a lot or don't speak enough. So failing to ask right questions and like treating interview as one-side process oftentimes is the reason for rejection. So do not confuse an interview with an interrogation. We all heard at some point of time that to show you are smart, you need to present your weakness as your strength. So answering questions in this approach will prove that you are dishonest instantly. So making a so-called weakness seem positive is for sure a bad idea. And the last point is your hiring manager who would love to hire a person who is full of energy, proactive, and goes extra mile to display his or her passion and interest in the job. After all, people like people who value them. In short, if you are waiting for a call after the interview without a thank you email to the interviewer or any follow-up question to the recruiter, and another candidate is showing interest, in contact with the recruiter, wrote an impressive thank you email to the interviewer, of course, the other person will more likely to get a job compared to you. So keeping in mind that you're competing with a global pool of candidates, you can strategize job applications in advance to stay ahead of the crowd. So that's it from my end. Thank you so much, and over to Liam.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Gayatri. And so next slide. I believe, thank you, Gayatri, for sharing useful information derived from personal experiences. I believe now we're going to do, well, as I mentioned earlier, here's our social medias. So don't be afraid to follow and get in contact via email or social media for anyone interested. And I think now we're going to do some question and answers. So any questions from anybody? And I have a question here, first of all. So the first question I have, do I need UK work experience to apply for a job? I applied for jobs matching with my skills, but they are asking for a work permit. What should I do?
Well,
go on. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, no problem. Please go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, if you've got work experience and that's something that's required as part of the job, then perfect. You don't always have to have UK-based experience because it's not always possible to gain that. But you have to show the transferability of the clients, the contact, the expertise that you've had into the UK market. So does that make sense? I think you won't always have the opportunity to have UK-based experience. Some employers might prefer it, but you need to be able to show that cultural awareness.
Yeah.
Perfect, great answer. Next question, how to apply and get shortlisted?
Tara can answer this better.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, you can answer this well, better than me.
So the main thing with applying in shortlisting is really some of the principles that I highlighted in the first part of this webinar, is that you need to understand where the positions are that you're interested in. Are you looking at the right job sites? Are you looking at the right opportunities? They will follow their instructions about whether it's an online application or a CV and cover letter. And you make sure that it's tailored. In order for it to be shortlisted, it's making sure that you're paying attention to the quality and the tailoring of your application. Because where candidates fail to secure interviews is because either they don't meet the requirements, or they might not have an appropriate visa, or they actually are not selling themselves appropriately in a UK-based format. If you're not getting shortlisted or actually getting the job offer, but you're getting interviews, then that's really more to do with your interview technique and preparation, which might need more support and attention.
Great answer. On to the next. So I am already in the UK and working with a top technology company, but I think it's time for me to switch job for better growth. How can you help me?
Brilliant. So one of the ways that I work with clients is really, I have sort of telephone consultations, and most coaches would have that with that. You need to understand what the main problem is and issue that you have and what you need support with. So is it about identifying the right organisations? Is it understanding how you tease out the strengths and the skill sets and the areas of expertise? Because not all of us are comfortable in doing that or reflecting that in an objective way. But career coaches can help on revitalising your CV, give you feedback on your applications. We typically don't write them for you. You'll get some providers who will provide that service. But I'm someone that actually, CV writing applications is a learned skill that's for life. So I think if you're looking for feedback on your applications, absolutely. If you're looking for practice interviews, that is a really good way to get sample questions, tailored feedback. It can all be done over Zoom, and you're actually getting more progress and support on your strategy. So consider where you feel the main downfall is, that you're not making progress. And if you engage with myself or any other career coach or service, it's seeing what service they can support you with that.
Perfect. Good information. So another one here. I am a developer working in India and very much interested in to start a career in the UK, but quite overwhelmed with the entire visa and job application process. I know UK market is highly competitive. What is your suggestion for people like me?
I think one of the things, again, the principles of everything that we've talked about is it's about being very clear your reason for moving to the UK, your type of role and seniority and opportunities that you're looking for, because you need to be clear what the destination is, what type of role and opportunity, but making sure that you're aware that your CV, your application strategy, and how you communicate about yourself is really key. If you're not sure where to look for positions, again, there are some, from a technology point of view, there are some really good websites. So anything from, you've got cvlibrary.co.uk, Total Jobs, Indeed. You have ukhired.com. You've got organisations like womenintech.co.uk. Techno jobs specialise in IT jobs and technology roles within the UK, data science and data management roles. So there's a whole range of specialist technical organisations, recruitment agencies and online job boards that can help you understand what roles and opportunities are available.
Great stuff. Another one quickly. So I applied for a few jobs in London, but never hear from them. So I want to know what matters most to secure an interview.
Well, the short thing is that you're addressing really clearly why you want the position and why you're suited for it. That's the nub of all of applications. If you're not hearing anything back, it's not uncommon. It's like I highlighted before. Sometimes there are so many applications that have been submitted, they will only contact, purely out of resource and logistics and time, they will only contact people who've been successful. But if you want to inquire about where they're at the shortlisting process, there's nothing stopping you from doing that. But if you are just automating your job search strategy, if you're just uploading your CV and not tailoring it and sending it out to many, many different opportunities, you might be lucky, but actually the tailoring element of it is really, really crucial.
Okay, perfect. I think we're going to end after one more question. So for the last question, how to get a job in the UK from countries like India?
So regardless of which country you're coming from, the principles are exactly the same in terms of understanding the UK market. Are you clear about the role that you're going for, where those opportunities are advertised, the expectation of how they typically recruit, how are you engaging with employers in those industries, how are you keeping up to date to what's going on in that sector within the UK market. So I think regardless of which country, we have people all over the world who have successful UK-based careers. And I think really this is about understanding how you sell yourself to the best of your ability. And if you are really struggling on how to overcome certain challenges in your job search, then speaking with an organisation like Temis or myself as a career and interview coach, we can help provide strategies on how you can sort of manage that process for you.
Okay, perfect. I believe that was the last question. So thank you very much to Sarah and Gayatri for the informative presentation and for the answering of the questions for our participants. So this concludes the webinar, but before we sign off, we appreciate all the attendees joining the webinar and hope you have some clarity on how to get a job in the UK. Feel free to reach out to us via email or social media, and we are really honoured to have such a large audience at a high level engagement with a global audience. Once again, thank you for attending the webinar and have a great day.